We have breaking news as we come on the air tonight. The verdict is in for the American Sniper trial. The jury finding troubled ex-Marine Eddie Ray Routh guilty of murdering Chris Kyle and his friend Chad Littlefield in cold blood. His insanity defense rejected after less than 3 hours of deliberation late tonight. A poignant final chapter to a story that continues to captivate our country.
All rise.
After 9 days of an involved and emotional murder trial, the judge delivered the jury's verdict in this hushed courtroom.
We, the jury, find the defendant Eddie Ray Routh guilty of the felony offense of capital murder as charged in the indictment.
Eddie Ray Routh found guilty of capital murder in the killing of Navy SEAL sniper Chris Kyle and his friend Chad Littlefield. The jury of 10 women and 2 men rejected Routh's plea of not guilty by reason of insanity after less than 3 hours of deliberation. A sad epilogue to the epic story of Chris Kyle, the larger-than-life character played by Bradley Cooper in the Oscar-nominated blockbuster film American Sniper.
I just want to get the bad guys.
We know the former Marine pulled the trigger and killed Kyle and Littlefield. That was never in dispute. The question, after weeks of testimony from almost 30 witnesses, it all boiled down to this. Was Routh a cold-blooded murderer? Or was the Marine veteran so mentally ill he didn't know right from wrong when he killed the men? The jury, swayed by the prosecution, voted guilty.
Confinement for life in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice without the possibility of parole.
Late tonight, Chad's mother, Judy Littlefield, briefly addressed the cameras.
We've waited 2 years for God to get justice for us on behalf of our son. And as always, God has proved to be faithful. And we're so thrilled that we have the verdict that we have tonight.
Chris Kyle's widow had returned to Texas after a weekend trip to the Oscars, where she walked the red carpet, clutching her husband's dog tags and speaking to our own Robin Roberts.
And I know it was very important for you to be here tonight. Tell us why.
I wanted to be here to represent Chris, obviously, and it's not the ideal time to do that, but I still want to embrace everything that he should be here to do with me.
They fry you if you're wrong.
American Sniper was nominated for 6 Oscars this year, and since premiering in late December, it's grossed a worldwide total of more than $400 million. The movie cast a large shadow over the trial as both sides wrapped up their case tonight. The prosecution and defense painting 2 very different pictures of the accused killer.
He's gone to the well, the deep well of excuses for his violent behavior too many times. It's time for it to stop. If he doesn't know what he's doing, he's not really capable of answering that question. That's just like asking him if the sky's purple. Regardless of what his answer is, it doesn't get you anywhere.
The prosecution says the Iraqi vet was intoxicated and reckless when he killed Kyle and Littlefield and faked symptoms of mental illness for his insanity plea. The defense, meanwhile, says Routh had been suffering from schizophrenia at the time of the shooting and was paranoid that assassins out to get him. It's been 2 years since Routh killed the men at a gun range during what was meant to be a therapeutic session to help him cope with post-traumatic stress.
When he killed 2 guys, they went out to a shooting range.
The 911 phone call and the sequence of events that followed closely scrutinized in a trial that captured the nation's attention. And tonight, for the first time, we are given access to the audio of the trial.
The state calls Taya Kyle.
The prosecution opened the case 2 weeks ago on an emotional note, calling his widow to the stand.
Who were you married to prior to February the 2nd, 2013?
Chris Kyle.
With those dog tags in hand, she tearfully recounted the last time she saw her husband.
We just said we loved each other and gave each other a kiss and a hug like we always did.
Kyle says she could tell something was wrong when her husband called her from the gun range.
Didn't seem like normal Chris when you talk.
No, because normally going out there, especially a place like Rough Creek, it's beautiful. He feels really good about helping somebody. Usually he's making their day and he knows it, which is what, you know, had happened earlier. He thought that guy sounded really excited to go, and so he thought he was doing a good thing.
So he sounded a little irritated when you talked to him mid-afternoon.
Yeah, it was very short, and it wasn't like short like, hey, you're interrupting a good time. It was short like, I wish I could say more, but I'm not going to because there are people around.
Shortly after that conversation, Routh fatally shot Kyle and Littlefield multiple times at close range. He then fled in Kyle's pickup truck, leading the police on a high-speed chase that at one point reached more than 100 miles an hour. This dashboard cam video captures it all, which the prosecution played for the jury. One officer rams the truck, but it doesn't stop Routh. The chase continues until mechanical problems force the truck to stop in the middle of the interstate. Routh gets out, hands in the air, and is swarmed by officers. The prosecution even provided another angle of his takedown to show that Routh is fleeing from police, which they say proves he knew what he did was wrong. The jurors also heard confession tapes. Here he is in the police interrogation video, head down on the table, hands cuffed behind his back. He sits up when the Texas Ranger walks in and asks him what he did. Routh gives rambling answers. Last week, prosecutors called 2 experts, building a case that Routh was not insane when he killed the 2 men. He did know what he was doing was wrong, and he did it anyway, testifies Dr. Randall Price, a forensic psychologist who spent 1.5 years reviewing the case and more than 10 hours interviewing Routh. He says Routh was a heavy drinker and marijuana smoker who was drunk and high when he shot the 2 men at this Texas gun range. The defense, on the other hand, closed its case with a different doctor, a psychiatrist who says Routh was a schizophrenic and was so paranoid he thought Kyle and Littlefield were pig assassins, sent to execute him as part of pigs taking over the earth. But prosecutors argue Routh made up the pig story after watching too much TV in jail. They say he's a fan of Seinfeld and the pig-hunting reality show Boss Hogg. Prosecutors also played a series of voicemails Routh left on Chris Kyle's phone the week before the shootings. One included a bizarre rant about the weather. The defense argues the man in the voicemail is sick and doesn't know what he's talking about.
He killed those men because he had a delusion. He believed in his mind that they were going to kill him.
The jury also got a chance to see Routh in the back of a police cruiser just after his arrest. When the officer asks if he's okay, he says, "I've been paranoid schizophrenic all day. I don't even know what to make of the world right now. I don't know if I'm insane." The defense says he also suffers from post-traumatic stress. But Kyle's sniper instructor, Brandon Webb, who also battled PTSD, insists it's a treatable diagnosis, not a defense for murder.
I don't believe he suffered from PTSD. I believe he was mentally ill, and I think that's a big difference. And had Chris known that this was a person that was suffering from mental illness, not a veteran suffering from post-traumatic stress, I don't think Chris would have ever found himself on the shooting range with this guy.
Guilty of the felony offense of capital murder as charged.
Tonight, the jury found Routh to be sane when he killed the men, handing down the guilty verdict, putting him away for life in prison with no possibility of parole. A dramatic, real-life ending to the American Sniper saga.
And joining us now, ABC's Ryan Owens, who's covered the trial from the very beginning, right there in the courthouse for us tonight when the verdict was handed down. Ryan, tell us what you're seeing.
Well, let's start with those deliberations, Juju. A lot of people surprised only 2.5 hours. That's it. The clerk telling us an hour of that was for dinner. The conventional wisdom is that short deliberations mean guilty. That's certainly what we got here. As far as inside the courtroom, Taya Kyle, Chris Kyle's widow, has been here every single day of this 9-day trial. But surprisingly, she was not actually in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Earlier today, she was overcome by emotions during defense closing arguments when they were saying that Eddie Routh was insane. She was crying. She got up, left, and did not come back. We did, as you point out, hear from Chad Littlefield's mother. She's been very emotional from the beginning, and today saying she thanked God for this verdict. Juju?
Ryan, our thanks to you and the entire team there for us in Texas.